everybody a few moments to join. All right. Welcome to today's webinar. I'll just do some housekeeping before we actually start. You can choose to have your video on or off. It's your choice. And the host has muted all of the attendees. When we have questions, though, at the end of the presentation, and we'll let you know when that is, this setting will be removed and you'll be able to ask your questions. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the chat function, which is down the bottom of your screen and is called chat, to enter your questions. You will have the chance to ask your question yourself at the end of the presentation. Please wait until we open up the question session, and if you want to speak, you'll need to raise your hand so that we can be fair to everyone. Once you have asked your question, make sure you lower your hand by clicking on the hand symbol again. And what we'll do is we'll go through the questions that are in the chat first. So if you place your questions in the chat as the presentation occurs, we'll start with those questions. Our presenters are in an internet reception area that can be poor at times. If you are hard of hearing or want to make sure that you don't miss anything, you can add closed captions to the screen. To do this, down the bottom of the screen, you'll see a CC icon, which is for closed captions at the bottom of the screen. And you can choose this setting. This will allow you to see the captions. And if you need the writing to be larger on the subtitle settings, you can increase it or decrease the font size. When the closed captions appear on your screen, you can also drag the captions box to a location on the screen that works for you, so that it doesn't cover anything that you want to see. As you already know, in B&B Varroa Warriors, we like to explore different techniques and management practices. We also have a diverse group of people in Varroa Warriors, which makes for richer discussion. Whether you choose this method for your hives or not, it is still worthwhile finding out about it. And in Varroa Warriors, we let you, our members, choose how you will manage your bees. We just share the information. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Anna and Sven from Varroa Controller Australia. They have been dedicated to pure chemical-free honey for the past 9 years, focusing on looking after the health of their bees. The Varroa Controller is a device for the heat treatment of the capped bee brood, with a proven treatment of 97%. Considering that 80% of the mites are located in the brood, this substantially reduces the Varroa numbers in a colony. Sven and Anna's beekeeping journey began with them rescuing bee colonies from tricky spots. In just 3 months, they had 34 colonies producing honey, and amber drop honey was born and quickly became their full-time occupation. They have been dedicated to creating pure, chemical-free honey for the past 9 years, focusing on looking after the health of their bees. Instead of relying on standard Varroa treatments that didn't fit their values, they sought out better natural solutions to keep their bees healthy and their honey pristine. And that is how this new venture began. So please, everybody, welcome Sven and Anna. Over to you now, Sven and Anna.
Hi everybody.
Hello.
Thank you so much for your time today. We'll try and do the presentation as short and succinct as possible so that we can get onto a conversation with everyone's questions, hopefully being answered tonight. So as to who we are and what we do, Shelby has already given you most of the highlights. So we used to have, can you see this middle thingy? So we used to have a honey business, and everything was going quite well until Varroa mite appeared. And it doesn't, yeah. And so once Varroa mite came, we were obviously faced with the options available. We lost about 80 hives in the red zone. And so we were trying to decide, do we continue beekeeping or not? And using chemicals was not one of our preferred methods. We also went to one of the DPI workshops, and we were actually quite overwhelmed with the information that they gave us in terms of what you have to do, what you're allowed to do depending on the temperature, not allowed to do back-to-back. The options available for us were still quite detrimental to the bees. So we had a friend visiting us from Germany who is actually a beekeeper, and he had been using the Varroa Controller for a few years very successfully, and he told us about it. And we started researching as one option that we thought would work for us. And so the Varroa Controller, as Shelby has explained, relies on hypothermia, and it relies on the fact that the bee brood and the Varroa mites have different heat resistances. So what the bees can sustain, the Varroa mite cannot. Luckily for us, there's a difference there. So this machine was developed about 14 years ago in Austria by an engineer who is also a beekeeper and was sick and tired of using chemicals in his own hives. So he was obviously scratching his own itch, but found that it was very successful. And the reason why it works so well is because you only treat the brood, so you don't stress the whole hive like some other hypothermia methods do. The machine has a humidification system that keeps the brood at the same humidity as a hive. The same thing with the temperature prior to the treatment. The brood is kept at the hive temperature, so you're not drying or stressing or cooling that brood. You can feed every frame size, and the temperature control is a very delicate sensor, and the treatment goes only for 2 hours. That allows the bees to be like not damage the bees, but it allows us to kill the mites, and it kills the mite within 24 to 48 hours of actually being in the controller. The Varroa Controller comes in 2 sizes for different types of beekeepers. The smaller size has 10 frames, fits 10 frames, and the larger size fits 20 frames. Obviously, there are different sizes and different weight capacities. And then the other thing that this inventor Wolfgang created was this duplex frame box, which allows us to cage the queen with 2 frames. So it doesn't slow down the reproduction cycle in the hive, but it makes all the mites that are about to reproduce to go into those those 2 frames, which means you can basically catch every mite reproducing with the 2 frames and treat very effectively. And if you wanted to then catch the phoretic mites, you could repeat the treatment with 2 new frames, and then all the mites that were on the bees would be inside the box, and you could treat them. Obviously, that doesn't take into account any reinfestation. So for us, the advantages of the Varroa Controller were that you can still keep healthy bees because they're not damaged or affected by any chemicals. The mites does not become resistant. It doesn't affect the honey production because you don't need to take any supas out, and it doesn't affect any of your hive products because it doesn't leave any residues, and it's not a recurring cost, even though it's also not the cheapest tool. Other advantages for us is that it fits all types of frames, including wire, top bar hives, because the bar is flexible. You can treat at any time of the year. So basically, if you are comfortable opening your hive in terms of temperature and weather and everything like that, you are able to treat. There is no wastage of expired chemicals, and there's no danger to the environment or the beekeeper. And again, you don't have to waste any honey or frames, and you can rotate frames as you were doing previously. One thing that we want to make sure is that it is not a silver bullet. It's not, as the name says, it's a Varroa controller, not a Varroa eradicator. So you will always have some mite population in your hive. The idea of the controller is to keep it to such a low level that the hive doesn't suffer from it. What we need to be careful with in Australia is our conditions are different than in Europe, and the current infestation rate is really high. When this machine was invented, they had already Varroa for a long time, so they were dealing with already very stable populations of mites. They also don't have the hive beetle, and at the moment, especially in our area, we're in the mid-north coast, so we've had a very, very humid summer. The hive beetles are going crazy. And of course, every time you have feral hives that are collapsing, they probably create an even better environment for the hive beetle. And then we don't have the brood break that they do have in Europe. So those are things that I think we need to be aware of, that the first maybe 1 to 3 years, depending on which area and how many feral colonies are around you, are probably going to be hard, regardless of which method you use. And we are hearing from people losing colonies, whether they use chemicals, natural methods or not. It's a new parasite that our bees are not used to, and we have the added, I guess, problem of the hive beetle. But this is a method that has been used in Europe very successfully for different sizes of beekeepers. Obviously, in Europe, they don't have or certainly not in Austria or Germany, the amount of the beekeepers that have the amount of hives that some of our larger beekeepers have here, like 5,000, 10,000 hives. Their operations are at a much smaller scale. But even with 400 hives, 200 hives, queen breeders, hobby beekeepers, they all are seeing huge success and a very easy way of maintaining their hives. In Europe at the moment, the recommendations are 3 treatments per year. So they have their natural brood break, and then they do 3 other treatments through the year. So obviously roughly every 3 months. For us, once the population stabilizes, and I guess depending on which climate area we are, we probably would be looking at least 4, maybe 6 treatments per year. So it is labor in like, you have to put the labor in, basically. And in terms of how to use it, Sven has kindly, we have our first review in Australia. So we've started bringing them. End of October was our first shipment, and many of the people that bought were already dealing with Varroa with chemical treatment, so they had to wait for the chemical treatment to kind of wear out before they started with the Varroa controller, which probably is not really necessary because you can treat at any time, even if you're having chemicals already. You could, if you're using chemicals that treat the phoretic mites, you could treat with Varroa for the brood mites. But anyway. So in terms of efficiency, it kills 97% of all the mites in the brood that is treated. The hypothermia is something that has been studied for a long time, but like as I said before, many of the treatments involved heating up the whole hive, which then you have 2 opposing forces, the bees trying the hardest to keep the temperature down and the machine trying to keep it up. And we feel that this is a less stressful way of heating up the part of the hive that you actually want to treat. So we are going to show you now a little video on how to use it that hopefully answers many of the questions. And then I can touch on a couple of things, and then we can open for questions. Let's give us a quick minute for that to load. Is that big enough, you think, the screen?
I plugged in the controller already to the generator, very easy. And I do some friction paper rolls in the bottom, so it's easier later to clean it. And I put the container in with the demineralized water going in. Fill it up. So this point. Close the controller. Switch it on. And now the controller is heating up the temperature to 35 degree, temperature like in the beehive, and makes the humidity like in the beehive. So that takes a couple of minutes, and when this is ready, we start putting frames in it. So that's a good frame. It's mostly kept brood. I will shake all the bees off. Clean it up the top a little bit. Brush the last piece off. And put it in the controller. This we do until the controller is full. That's the last frame where we take put the sensor in the middle of the frame, in the middle of the brood, in a 45-degree angle. Make sure it's not sticking out on the other side. Put it in. Close it up. And everything shows green. I press the start button and it's counting backwards. In 2 hours it will be ready to take the frames out and put it back in the hive. So after you took all the frames out back into the hive, I removed the paper towels already in the wall. Then you have to start the drying cycle. It's all written down in the menu, very easy. And then you just wipe it all down. Or if you lend it out to other beekeepers, you can use alcohol for this to make sure everything is gone. Important is to clean the bars where the frames hang on. There could be some bugs here. Make sure it's all nicely taken off. Maybe you need it in a scraper. It's very easy. What I said earlier, maybe you wipe them with alcohol as well. Oh, forgot to use some wax and honey. Better. Ready for the next time. Different frame sizes for top bar hives or Varroa hives. You can adjust this bar to a very small frame to the fully length-round frame and everything between. So there should be a frame size for everybody. So it's easy to move around. There's wheels in the back, 2 handlebars here in the front. And if you need a second person to lift it up, there's another handles here in the back. And you can store it this way, or there are legs on the bottom. You can store it also this way to save some space in your garage.
Okay. Just one of the thing, something to take to let you know is on that video that Sven was with the bees, it sounds like they were really angry and you might think that they were really stressed, but Sven had been sick and we had to do the video for this presentation. And the only day we could do it, there was a storm coming and the bees were very, very angry. So a couple of things to touch after you've seen it. So one of the things that is very easy to do is the actual setting of the machine. There's nothing you can change. You cannot misread the instructions because there's only the button for heating up, for reaching the temperature of 35 degrees, then the button to start the countdown that actually does the treatment, and then the dry cycle, which is good to run after you've used it to kind of like get the humidity out of the machine. But really, it's impossible to get it wrong. And some of the questions that we had on the registration that I would like to touch on so that we can maybe move on to some other questions is whether one of the questions was whether it's suitable for flow hives, and it is. So basically, obviously you're treating the brood base, the brood box, and the brood box is the same as a Langstrom, so that's not a problem. One of the questions was whether it stresses the bees. And of course, any hive manipulation stresses the bees. So that's where I think we are going to have a bit of a balancing act through the period of reinfestation, where every beekeeper is going to have to weigh up how heavy is my infestation, how often do I want to treat versus how often do I want to stress the hive when they already have the stress of Varroa, which they're not used to deal with. So I don't know, for us, we are, do you want to?
Yeah, maybe you can combine some work, taking honey off, treating, splitting the hive, treating, checking for AFB and treating. So you put it into your workflow anyway. So it's not an extra day to open it up and do all the controlling if you can combine it with other work in the hive.
Yeah. And then one of the questions was the possibility of rental. So this is something that in Europe, some of the beekeepers actually have made it into a business of actually buying controllers to rent them out to other beekeepers. That would be something, and we've had clubs already purchasing the controller to share with their members. Because the controller inside is all stainless steels, and because it is very easy to wipe it with alcohol, the chance of AFB or any other diseases transmitting is actually really, really small or zero. And so it's one of these pieces of equipment that it is suitable to hire out to other people, or even for a group of beekeepers that live in a relatively close area to share, because obviously you don't need it every day or every week. So you could come together and buy one and then share it around.
And the frames, they're actually touching just the bars, not the inside of the controller. So the bars are easy to clean.
Yeah. And then one of the other question was the viability for commercial beekeepers. So obviously it depends on how you run your operation and what your priorities are. If there is anybody that is organic and wants to or values clean honey, obviously the Varroa Controller is going to be a little bit of extra work, but like Sven says, if you put it in together with your workflow of when you are going to treat or manipulate or take honey or whatever, if you're going to do work with your bees, you can run the controller. For commercial beekeepers, you would probably need to buy a few units, depending on the size of your apiary, and run a couple of cycles. So for example, we have most of our apiaries are 60 hives and under. So Sven takes 4 controllers and runs them. And again, that would depend as well how many brood frames you have per hive at any different time of the season. But basically, he runs 2 or 3 cycles in an apiary of 60 hives. So, and we also feel maybe for large commercial beekeepers, it might work better after the Varroa population is a bit more stable, because then you don't have to be so much on top of it. You have to just create a schedule and then work on that schedule.
And it's not so important how many hives you have, but it is important how many hives per site you have, and then adjust the number of controllers to the number of hives per site. It doesn't matter if you have 100 hives or 10,000. Usually the commercial beekeepers have sites between 100 and 120 hives. So with 8 controllers and 2 guys, you can treat all the hives in one day easily.
Mm-hmm. And then one of the other questions was whether it needs an external power source. And yes, so if you have your hives at home, you can plug it into a normal socket. If you have an apiary that is away from your home, you need a generator. The question as well asked if it could be adapted to a battery. We are not electricians, so we have no idea. We think not, but maybe someone that knows more about electricity. The idea with the controller is it doesn't draw power all the time, but obviously it needs to have power available at all times, because it as the temperature starts moving, it tries to maintain it at the 41.5 all the time.
And the 20 frame controller draws 600 watt and the 10 frame controller 400 watt. So it's actually not too much.
And if anyone is going to use a generator, it needs to be a sine wave generator. So it needs to be a generator that doesn't allow for power surges, because that could damage the controller. So most of the new
Euro generators,
but like few years already have that. But if you had a very, very old generator, you would have to check that is the case. And one of the questions was, is there a guarantee that it works? And the answer is yes, it kills the mites, but it's how you use it and how you're monitoring and how you are treating the hives at the right time that matters a lot in our current situation. Because in the Midlands Coast where we are experiencing really high infestation rates. In our apiaries, we only had mite recently. So even the first apiary that got the mite was in October.
Yeah.
So it's been fast and furious in the last few months. So that's something that, again, in Europe, they didn't have to deal with for a long time. So yeah, it's about monitoring, it's about learning. And Australia, unfortunately, has so many different climate areas that we probably all have to kind of create a little bit of our own treating schedule to suit our needs. Yeah, so I don't know, Shelby, have we answered most of the questions? And if not, we're happy to take questions from the floor.
Wonderful. So what we'd like to do now is to have a look at the chat area in the webinar. And I think I actually asked the first question. So my question was, you said that the mites will die and drop off over the next sort of period of time. It's not instantaneous. So does that mean that the hive, when I put the frames back into the hive, does that mean that the next day or so I might see a large number of mites on the bottom of on the sticky mats or on the bottom of the hive, or is that what I should expect?
So the young mites, they're dying straight away in the treatment time, and the mother or more adult mites dying in the next 1 to 2 days. And you will see the mites when the bee is hatching. That could be the next day, this could be in 5 days and 8 days. And then they're bringing all the dead mites out, the bees cleaning out the cell, and then you will find them on the sticky mat. So over a period of 10 days, you will find every day new dead mites.
Okay. So it's a period of time after treatment that I will see a big death rate of mites.
Yeah, what I said could be the next day already when the bees are all hatching or shortly before hatching and we treated them.
Yeah.
Or the cells are recently kept. It takes another 10 days until the young bees are hatching, and then you will see the mites coming out.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Now, Claire, you also made a comment on my post. So is there anything that you would like to ask? If there is, please take yourself off mute. And then we'll go over to Carlo or Carlu to talk about their question. So Claire, did you have anything that you wanted to add or ask regarding that response? Okay. All right. So Claire said, I think the varroa mites will die in the cap cells, and when the larvae emerge, the bees will clean them up. So that's what you've just said. So thank you for that clarification. All right. Carlo or Carlu, I'm not so sure how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Would you like to ask your question, please, and take yourself off mute. And then after that, we will have Bavel or Claire again, potentially if they would like to comment. Carlu, do you want to ask your question? Okay, I'll ask it. I hear the machine will maintain a temperature in the hive to kill the varroa, but does not kill the bees. May I know at what temperature will the machine maintain? So what temperature is it maintained at?
The temperature in the machine will be around 41.5 degrees for 2 hours. And this kills the mites, but does not harm the bee larvae or pupas.
Okay, thank you. Bavel, did you want to ask your question?
Yes, thanks. I wasn't sure what you were saying or meaning when you were talking about the frame and the queen.
Okay.
I missed that totally.
Sorry, I probably went too quickly through that. Do you want to?
Yeah. So in addition to the controller, you can use this double frame box. What I said, it fits 2 frames. So for example, you put 1 sticky in and 1 foundation frame and the queen and hang it in the middle of the brood box. So the queen will lay eggs in the next few days in this sticky. The bees will repair it and the queen will lay it. And then they start drawing out the other frame, the foundation frame, and then the queen will lay there as well. And after 2 weeks, all the mites in the breeding station cycle will be in these 2 frames. So then the other brood outside of the 2 frames, and all the mites will in the box in the 2 frames. And then you treat these 2 frames when you got 80% of the mites dead. And then if you want to do a second treatment, you put another 2 frames in with the queen, and then you get all the mites that have been previously on the bees. They will be in the frames now, trying to reproduce. So you get almost 100% of the mites, except for the reinfestation, where the bees bringing mites from the outside in.
Thank you. Much clearer.
I'm so glad you asked that question, Bavel, because it allowed us all to get a clearer understanding of that. So thank you. Claire, I'm assuming that you wanted the screen to be larger than what it was when it was being displayed. So my apologies for that. If there's something else that you wanted to add there, though, please take yourself off mute and ask that. Okay. Next was my question. It appeared on the video that putting the sensor in the frame at the 45-degree angle and making sure that that was all correct was an important part of the process. What happens if the sensor falls out whilst I'm treating the frames in the Varroa controller? Is that critical?
Would be critical, yes, but the sensor cannot get out. There's not enough space for the sensor to get out, actually. So make sure when you close the lid, the sensor is in there, and it will stay there for the 2 hours. And actually, the little cable on the sensor is clipped onto the top bar of the last frame.
Right, so it can't kind of fall off onto the bottom of the Varroa controller, but it may come out of the frame that I've attempted to put it in because I didn't do it properly. And it still won't matter because it will still be sensing what's happening in the Varroa controller. Is that correct?
Yes, but ideally you are measuring the temperature in the brood inside, and that's why you need to put it, because then that the temperature has reached 41.5 where the mites are.
In the cells.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Carlu, you asked what was the liquid, and Ange was right on top of it and answered the appropriate answer of demineralized water, I believe.
Yes.
Which you can purchase readily from hardware stores.
Yeah, even in the supermarket at Coles.
And supermarket, yeah.
Okay,
so the next person is Keith. Would you like to ask your questions, Keith? So please take yourself off mute and do that.
Thanks. I think my second 2 questions have been answered, but the first one is, does it kill hive beetle and wax moth eggs?
We don't know, actually. Probably not. If it would be great, but we don't have any proof yet.
And actually, hive beetle likes it warm, so it probably is not going to. I think it would have to be way hotter for the hive beetle to be affected. But we don't know.
But there's also no negative effect. So the hive beetle are not breeding more because of the heat treatment. So far, we know there's no effect on hive beetles.
Thank you.
Keith, did you want to clarify anything regarding your other two questions? You're welcome to.
No, I think they've been answered through the other conversation.
Okay. Well, Cynthia is up next. So, Cynthia, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Well, in fact, I think this has probably been answered as well. And I was asking, in a club situation, is it possible for club members to share without the risk of AFB or spreading any other diseases? But you have actually answered this, even to the point where you mentioned that people are renting it out. So this would be a good situation for a club to have their own Varroa controller. So, you know, that's perfectly, it's been answered. So thank you.
No problem.
Welcome.
Okay. I just made a comment because I didn't realize it was on wheels. So there you go.
The 20 frame controllers are on wheels. The 10 frame they don't have wheels. There's too
Okay.
short to track them behind you, you know. Maybe we can change it in the future. We will see.
Okay. Tiffany, you have a question, and then we have Ian after Tiffany. So, Tiffany, if you'd like to ask your question, please. Okay, well, let's ask Tiffany's question for her. There's so much assumed knowledge here. You guys are in Australia, right? Whereabouts?
Yes.
And why paper towels are needed at the bottom? What was the fluid? And what happens if a bee gets in?
So let's go. The paper towels in the bottom is just to make it easier for us to clean later because
Finds a drop of honey,
Yeah.
wax. Sometimes a big larvae try to escape the heat and it's falling out and falling down. So sometimes you find a couple of larvae on the floor. Yeah, for cleaning up some honey, a drop of honey or wax. It's just easier to clean.
Yeah.
And there's no problem. Is there a bee is staying in the controller or some young bees hatching in these 2 hours? They're still alive and you put them back in the hive and that's it.
yeah, when you think about it, bees can deal with much hotter temperature than 41.5 for 2 hours.
Yeah. And of course, you are in Australia. And do you want to just share your location so that people are aware what you're dealing with your bees at the moment?
Yeah, we are on the mid-north coast between Taree and Port Macquarie near Laurieton.
And we have apiaries all the way from around Coffs Harbour to what's this? Jones River. Jones River. We used to have apiaries in Bouladilla and Summersby in the Central Coast, and those are the ones that got destroyed with the red zone.
We're sorry about that, but thank you for sharing that. Ian, and then Nilza. So Ian, if you'd like to ask your question.
Good day, Sven and Anna.
Oh.
Just when you take all your frames out, from what I understand, you leave 2 frames in the beehive in that special 2 frame things with the sticky and also a foundations and the queen. Now, how did the other bees get into with the queen there?
This is like a huge queen excluder. The bees can go through the slots, but the queen cannot go through.
Right.
And this is all laser cut, so there's no sharp edges. The bees not getting damaged on their wings, so it's all really soft and smooth.
And so when you take all the frames out of the brood box, and so there's going to be a mass of bees there, and you just keep your supers off the side while you're doing that, or do you put your box back together?
We take only the frames out with capped brood. All the other frames, if there's some honey or pollen or with eggs and larvae, they stay in the brood box. Just with the frames with capped brood.
Okay, so you could still leave the pollen etc. on the side frames as long as there's no brood there.
Yeah, there should only be frames with mostly capped brood being treated. In the other frames, there are no mites in the cells. They're just going into the cell shortly before the cell get capped.
So the mites don't go up into the honey chambers at all. They're just always down the bottom.
Yes. Yeah.
They're very good.
Of course, we could have some in the supers as well on the bees, but not in the cells.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay. You also asked about the 240 volts as well.
Yes.
Yes, and that's standard Australian voltage.
Yeah.
Yes, that was answered. You need a good sine wave inverter. I'm an electrician myself.
Okay.
Because you can get an inverter and it's just a square wave.
Yeah.
And when I was working with Siemens on the locomotives, they had a square wave inverter, and it would blow up the Dell power supplies on our laptop computers. So it has to be a good quality sinusoidal waveform.
Yeah. All the new generators usually have it now.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Now, Nilsa, I think we've actually answered that we're not quite sure whether it's going to really impact on small hive beetle, but is there anything else that you wanted to ask or add to that?
Yeah, so I've actually got two questions. So the first one was why 41.5 degrees? Why is that the magic number?
It's the magic number. This does not harm the bee larvae, but it kills the mites. Everything higher would damage the larvae as well. Everything lower would not kill the mites. This is the sweet spot for 2 hours.
Yeah. Actually, in some studies, they've done up to 42, 43 degrees that they treat, but then they treat for different time periods. So the inventor of this machine thought the best was 41.5 for 2 hours.
For 2 hours, yeah.
Okay. And does the controller have to have, like, to be filled to capacity in order for it to work effectively, or could you just have 2 frames in there?
You can have only 2 frames in it, put it in the center and leave the edge free. If you have 10 frames, put it in the center, left and right, 5 empty spaces, no problem at all.
Okay. And last question, sorry. You said that there's a 20 frame controller and a 10 frame controller. I've actually been fortunate enough to see the 20 frame controller already. It was at Maitland Show this past weekend with our bee association. But do you guys actually import in the 10 frame controller as well?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
And what are costings for that one?
Okay, so yes, and maybe yes, because I see there's a couple of questions about price as well. So the small controller is 5,929, and the large one is 6,929. So they're not cheap, but for us, it was the matter of thinking about what do we want to do for the bees in the long term, and what do we want to do with our honey.
And they are very well built. The first ones are built 14, 15 years ago in Austria, and they're still running. And so it's not, you have to change them every few years. They're really well built.
Well,
Not
beekeeping in
made in
itself is
China.
not cheap, is it?
Sorry?
I said beekeeping in itself's not cheap, is it?
No.
Thank
But
you.
that's also why we feel that if a few beekeepers in an area could work together and share it, it would be something that is quite affordable for the actual result that you get.
No, the DPI needs to start funding them.
Okay, thank you, Nilsa. Lawrence, did you want to ask your question? And then we have Carlu again. Okay, Lawrence said, how did you calculate the time, the 2 hours to heat the frame to reduce the number of varroa mites on the frame? Is there some sort of a timer on the Varroa controller that helps you determine that you're at 2 hours, or do you need to keep checking your watch?
So you go.
So when the controller is filled up with frames, you press the start button, and then the controller heats up to 41.5 degrees for 2 hours. So the controller counts backwards. You can see it all the time, how much time is left. And after the 2 hours, the controller goes down to 35 degrees, like the temperature in a hive. So the treating process is not longer happen after these 2 hours. And usually I put an alarm in my iPhone for 2 hours, and then I come back a couple of minutes before the stops and take them out straight away and put them back into the hive.
Okay. So there's no sort of alarm or beeper on the unit itself to alert you, or there is as well?
Yes, as well. If the 2 hours are over, is a beep tone coming.
Lovely. Okay.
Thanks for the answer. My sound button's now working.
That's okay, Lawrence. Carlu, did you want to ask your question about about killing the varroa inside the cells? Maybe Sven and Anna can just clarify that for you. Does it actually kill the Varroa inside the cells?
Yes, it does. And the other thing that we haven't touched on that might be worth saying is using the duplex frame box and timing it correctly, you can actually catch the mite before it starts biting on the larva, or most of them before it starts biting on the larva. So we can actually decrease the disease transmission that varroas are well known for.
The Varroa mite is biting the pupa around 60 hours after the cell is kept. So you have a 60-hour time frame. If you treat, if we manage to treat in this time frame, the bee pupa is not harmed at all from the mites.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that extra piece of information. Alan. Alan Gray.
My question answered, thanks.
Okay. Nilsa, you've been answered on that one as well. Rhonda, did you have anything else you wanted to say? Okay. I think we've answered your question, Ian, about what the temperature range of the controller is. Yes? Okay. We've talked about pricing. We haven't really talked about availability. So, DG, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, do you, excuse me, do you have stock in Australia?
Yes, we have stock in Australia. The 10 framers are sold out at the moment, but the new shipment is already in Sydney. We're waiting every day to pick up. It's ready through customs and all the clearances. And then we have the 10 framers and the 20 framers in stock again.
But only 2 10 framers because the other ones have sold.
The other ones already sold before they came to Australia.
Those prices, are they including shipment or shipment extra?
Shipment is extra depending on where you are. We try to, depending on where do you live, DG?
Hunter Valley.
Hunter Valley. So, for example, because we go pick them up in Sydney, there could be an option that, depending on times, that you could meet us in the highway and we could deliver your controller free of charge. If people need to be, if it needs to be delivered, we use TNT. We've had some competitive rates from them. The caveat is they don't like to pick up from residential areas and they don't like to deliver to the residential area. So they put a huge surcharge on that. But if people are happy to go to a TNT depot, it costs around the $300 mark, roughly, around New South Wales and actually Queensland as well, that we've sent a couple.
So your stock is in Sydney, is that correct?
The next shipment has arrived in Sydney and is going through customs clearings at the moment.
So, but we bring the controller to our place in the mid-north coast. But we can deliver on the way up. And what Anna said, we can meet on a highway or some other place and we can give you your controller on the way up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, DG. Okay, Stuart. So you're in the red zone.
Yeah. So they've actually already answered it. They had hives down Mangrove Mountain, and that's the ones that were terminated, just like mine. I'm in the Hunter Valley, but I've only got one hive. And I just can't put my head around spending over $5,000 for a 10-frame Varroa controller to look after one hive. So anyone in the Hunter Valley that around Newcastle that has one of these, I'm more than happy to participate in a rental arrangement. I was going to ask them if they would rent out theirs, but they're up at Laurelton, so a little too far to take 2 frames up. But
are you a member of the Hunter Valley Club?
I'm not a member of any club. It's actually my 3rd year, and the Varroa actually knocked me out after the first year of me doing beekeeping. So I'm very, very early. I haven't joined any clubs as yet.
Because the Hunter Valley did buy one to share with their members.
So okay. So the Hunter Valley Beekeeping Association, yeah?
Yeah. And We are going to put a page on our website for the people that have bought that actually are happy to hire it out. List them so people that need to find one to hire, they can find each other.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's
problem.
great news for people like Stuart. So that's great. Jeff, you had a question there. Do you want to ask your question? And I can see, Murray, you've got your hand up. Is that because you want to ask a question in a little while? I've got that noted. We'll come back to you in a moment. You won't be forgotten. Jeff, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, mine's not a question. I'm the apiary coordinator at the Hunter Valley Amateur Beekeeping Club. So I put a thing in there saying we have a controller. That's the one that was demonstrated or on display at Maitland Show on the weekend. And if club members, if that guy wants to join the club, then we're going to have that to be able to lend out to club members.
Very good.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it will be at the Newcastle show in a couple of weeks if people want to come and have a look at one physically.
Okay. JP. JP, did you want to ask your question? Okay, I'll ask it. I note that it heats up and cools down. Can I presume that it is preset for a period of time to maintain the 41.5 degrees Celsius, or is this variable and dependent on the thermostat and outside temperatures? I think we've covered that. It's fairly regulated at 41.5 degrees, and then it cools it down appropriately for the bees to go back into their hives, and it is preset at the 2 hours. Did I miss anything?
No, but obviously the sensor is checking what the temperature is at.
Yes.
And you can put the frame straight away back into the hive, and the bees will cool it down. You will maybe see some bearding or activities. Like on a hot day, the bees cooling the hive down will be the same.
Okay, so Claire's got an interesting question here. Claire, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, it's actually Colin, not Claire, but
Oh, okay, Colin. You're
sitting next to me.
moonlighting as Claire.
Claire's she just got up for a second. She'll be back in a second.
Go ahead, Colin.
So I've been following Sven and Anna for a while and receiving a lot of information around the controllers, which are of course really interesting to us smaller scale beekeepers. There is, of course, I understand that it kills 80% of the mites that are in the cells. Do you practice or have any recommendations in your own apiaries around how to address the 20% that are not in the cells? And I'll put an example there. There's lots of, I know oxalic acid is not legal in Australia yet. And
no, it is.
It might be sometime, we don't know. But do you have any other processes to address that 20% that's still on the bees?
Yeah, it's very easy. After 2 weeks, you treat all the brood frames again, and then you got all the high mites that have been previously on the bees. They will be then in the cells. And also you can do some drone capping and all the stuff. As long as it's not chemical, we would do it as well, in addition to the controller, if you want to.
But basically what Sven says is if you do one treatment and then 2 weeks after you do another treatment, the ones that were on the bees, the 20% that were on the bees, all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, they have gone to breed in the cells, and so you catch them then.
Yep, no, I understand. Thank you for that.
And I'd just like to say that regarding any treatment techniques that you want to use on your bees that use chemicals, you are going to have to double check the DPI website or the ARBIC website to see what the latest chemicals are that we are able to use if you do choose to use chemicals, whether they be synthetic or organic chemicals. Because it's changing, it's evolving. Everything is altering as we speak. So you do need to keep double checking that. Okay, I think we've covered the next one, which was about the temperature again, and that it does not kill bees. And and the machine will definitely keep it at the appropriate temperature. Bavel, there's another question. Would you like to ask it another one?
What is the weight of the 10 frame, please? Is it a one-person movable? I mean, I lift my frames 120 kilos, but I've got my bees all over Adelaide.
So the 10 framers is 30 kilos. And the 20 framers is 40 kilos.
Okay, thank you.
If you're a strong woman, I'm sure you can carry 30 kilos and put in the car somewhere.
You bet. Okay.
But I
You got to eat more honey. That's what you got to do. Build up those muscles.
But I said in the video, there are also some handles on the other side. So if you have a second person, it's much easier for your back.
Excellent. Thank you. Aunt Rosie, did you want to ask your question? I think Rosie's joined us by her phone, so she may not be able to ask her own question. I'll do that for you. What do you do with the dead Varroa mites?
They are on the bottom of the hive when the bees are hatching, the bees cleaning them out. Sometimes I can even find them on the bottom of the controller. When in this 2-hour time frame, some bees hatching, they're bringing the dead mites out, and I can see them on the white paper.
And also, many of our hives have screen bottom boards, so we don't really, we don't need to do anything with them.
Okay. Julia, you've got a question.
Okay. Yeah, I just wondered if you had any feedback from clubs who did have your Varroa Controller, and if they had any tips or challenges that they found about sharing it and how, you know, to use it as effectively as possible as in a club situation.
Mm-hmm. So
it's not a long time since the clubs have them. So we did not have really any feedback from the clubs because they have them just a few weeks, some of them. So, but I think in the future we get some feedback, and there was already a member from the club telling us in this webinar how they use it and give it to the members.
But yeah, I think it's like every other equipment when clubs rent out, I don't know, a spinner or anything like that. You're going to have the members that look after it better than others. And I guess it's for the club to kind of find a system that means the person that returns it cleaned. And the other thing is that if I was a beekeeper hiring from the club, if you want to 100% be sure that you're not going to get any disease, you could quickly wipe the controller with alcohol before you start, and then after you finish, and then you know everything has been done properly for you.
Yeah, what Anna said earlier, this all stainless steel inside, and AFB spores don't stick to stainless steel. So it's very, very little, almost no chance to transmit any diseases through the controller.
Which is a good thing because we don't want to do that.
No.
Okay, Susanna, you wanted to know a little bit about warranty and servicing, which is a really great question. So do you want to ask your question as to what you wanted to know in that space, please?
So two things. We offer a 2-year warranty, and the owner of the machine, like the inventor in Austria, basically has told us, like I said, like Sven said before, the first units after 14, 15 years, they're still running. So they're very durable. The only thing that ever could break down or could be faulty eventually would be a sensor. And then if the sensor is not working properly, the machine will let you know that it cannot read the temperature. And he sent us sensors just in case. But the sensors, the electronics, everything is easily fixed by an electrician in Australia. So there's no major issues in terms of that. He's not expecting that to happen either, but just in case. And the other thing that we offer for people is if you buy it and within 6 months you're not happy with the results, we're happy to take it back of you. And obviously we will refund fully, providing the machine is not bashed up and damaged.
No,
sounds perfect. We've already got ours on order, so I think it's paid for actually. So I'm waiting for it, but it was just yes. So it's just a question about warranty, and I might just come down and pop in, pick it up off you.
Awesome.
There's actually a spare sensor in the machine, just in case you're somewhere on a paddock and the sensor breaks. You have one already in the machine. You open it up, and there's a spare sensor. You can swap them, and everything is fine again.
And
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Can't wait.
Thank you, Susanna. And what sort of maintenance is required moving forward using the machine besides cleaning it? Is there any other maintenance requirements?
Cleaning, and like I said, when you finish, it's good to run the dry cycle so you get the humidity out of the machine if you're going to close it and not use it for a while.
Yeah, or leave the lid a little bit open. If you store it for a few weeks, leave the lid a little bit open so there's a bit airflow.
Yeah, but even the dry cycle would do the thing.
Yeah.
And then you can, even if you want to store it upwards, you can store it.
Fantastic. And does it come with a manual that tells us all of those things?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
And we are always here to answer anybody's question. Like if anyone purchases and needs help, we are happy to help.
Fantastic. JP, you have another question. Did you want to ask it yourself? Okay, I'll just read it out. I have a couple of patchy laying queens with frames that have capped brood / grubs and occasionally, e.g. as well. Will the controller damage grubs / eggs, etc. that are not capped?
No, the controller won't not damage them because it keeps the humidity like in a hive, so they're not drying out. What I said earlier, some of the bigger grubs can trying to escape the heat and crawling out. And you can find a few maybe on the bottom of the controller, but that's it. They're not damaging the eggs or little larvae.
But again, for him, it might be easier to use the frame box because then it doesn't get so many frames of patchy brood. The queen is concentrated in the 2 frames.
And maybe you should change the queens eventually.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, then we have just a little bit of chatter. I think, Nilsa, we've answered your magic number question. We had some people who couldn't get themselves off mute when their questions time was here. DG, yes. And for everybody, you will be automatically sent a recording in a few days' time. Because you've registered, you'll automatically receive that. We've talked about the weight of the 10 frame. So I think we're fine there. Deb, did you want to ask your question? Okay, I'll ask it. I'm in Victoria, therefore we don't have mites yet, but we're watching the situation in New South Wales very closely and attending Varroa management workshops to educate ourselves on management. Has there been much discussion on the Varroa Controller as a valid treatment option at the Varroa management workshops in New South Wales? I must admit, I was very skeptical at first, but I am finding this presentation very interesting and informative. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess for us in New South Wales, the DPI workshop that we first went to was only talking about the chemical options and drone capping as another system. But we are hearing from other people that they are mentioning the hypothermia. So that's a good thing. For that person in Victoria, we are going to be at the Victoria Apiarist Association. They're having their conference at the end of March. And they're having Mike Allerton, who is the biosecurity guy for the ABA and one of the committee members for the Hawkesbury Club, who also bought a controller, and he also bought one for himself. He's going to do a talk about the controller, and then we're going to be there. So even in Victoria, people are talking about other options other than just chemicals. I don't know, like in my opinion, the government is probably more focused on chemicals, and whether that is because they need to go through the process of approving them and that's what they focus on. It could be that. I don't know. For us, that was not a valid option, really. So we went looking for something else.
Thank you. I've just worked out how to unmute myself.
That's okay, Deb. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
I was just saying, I noticed when we first started having the workshops down here in Victoria, there was some very interesting debate, some very heated debate at times, people very opposed to chemical methods and wanting a more natural solution to managing Varroa. We know that some of the hygienic behaviours that people are looking at overseas with breeding, that is a long way off here in Australia. So that's not going to be a quick fix for us. So we've actually got one of the ex-APRI officers speaking at our bee club in Geelong this Friday night. And he mentioned this to me the other day. So I think it's a very interesting thing to add into the discussion about management. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to hear more about it.
No problem. And this doesn't need to be for everybody, whether you are using chemicals or not chemicals. The controller might not be for everybody, but when we found about it, we were in a position where we were about to give up beekeeping, and we thought maybe there are other people in the same situation, and we would have loved to hear about it, basically. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
And Deb, that's a little bit why Be Natural Beekeepers Varroa Warriors was actually formed. It was to give people an alternative option to using chemical treatments, whether they be synthetic or organic. It was to look outside the box and see if there were other ways that we could actually manage the varroa mite that allowed our bees to thrive and continue to be healthy along with ourselves. So if you're not already a member, Deb, consider becoming one, because this is an ongoing journey and there will be a lot more information shared through Varroa Warriors.
Thank you. I'll definitely be following with interest.
Thank you. Okay. Now, Nilza and Jeff have had a little conversation on the side about what's happening at Hunter Valley Bee Club. And the clarification is that there is going to be a meeting on Sunday, if anybody's up in the Hunter Valley area who needs to attend that. Okay. Julie Watkins, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, thank you, Sven and Anna. I was just curious to know if I chose to sugar dust the bees, there would be residue on the frames. Would this have any, would this cause any difficulty within the Varroa Controller, particularly with cleaning?
No, not really, no.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And DG, you've actually been to a beekeeping club in Austria that uses one. That's fantastic.
Yeah, they have been managing the Varroa for many years over there, so they got about 30 years track record. And once this Varroa controller was been made available, they were one of the first ones to use it and use it successfully.
Very good. Good to hear.
All right. Emma, would you like to ask your question? Okay. Emma says, why is it necessary to use the special demineralized water?
Because you want your machine to last the 14, 15, 20 years so that you don't. So it's like.
There are minerals in the water and they would clog up the vaporizer. So it eventually would stop working. So it's very important to use demineralized water.
It's the same reason you're meant to use demineralized water in your iron, but who does that? I don't. But this is a bit of a more expensive piece of equipment, so you want to make sure that you look after it properly.
Yeah. Okay, next we're going to hear from Joanna so that she can ask her question. And Murray, I have not forgotten you. You'll be coming up very shortly. Okay, so Joanna, if you'd like to ask yours.
Yes, George. Thank you, Shelby, Anna, and Sven. This has been so interesting. One quick question. You said you have two 10-frame boxes in that next shipment that's due in a couple of weeks. How, without putting you under too much pressure, how soon after that shipment will your next one come in?
Usually that takes around 2.5 months from ordering until it arrives and we can pick them up. So this would be the time frame.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to consider is we are a small business. We are like, basically, this is the two of us. We don't have any financing or anything like that. So we need to play with our cash flow and
yeah,
and the shipping times. So
yeah. Thank you.
And depends how many hives you have. A 10 framer is really for people that have 1 or 2 hives. Everything above, I would suggest a 20 framer anyway, just to save the time, get it done as quick as possible with all your beehives.
Thank you, Joanna. Francine, you had a comment that you wanted to have as well about, did you want to ask your question? Francine says, do you sell the queen cage and how much are they, please? I don't know. Yes?
Yes, we do. And they're $71.
Okay. I'm going to come back to Rosie's comment in a moment. We're going to go over to Murray now so that you can ask your question. No, you don't need to? You're all good? Okay. All right. Well, Rosie has a lovely comment there and says that you are inspiring heroes. Encouragement is oxygen to the soul. Thanks heaps.
Thank you.
So, does anyone have any other questions that they would like to ask now or know anything about the Varroa Controller? Okay, well, I think it's been a very interesting session tonight. Thank you so much for answering all of our questions and for all of the participants. We couldn't have had a session like this without everyone participating the way that they have. So thank you. I think that was really fascinating because I didn't know all of that about the Varroa Controller. So Sven and Anna, do you have a slide that shows us how we can get in contact with you? And would you like to share your screen so that you can share that with everyone?
Quick, can I have the phone? Quick, right here. I just need it. Can you turn the light on? Sorry about that. I just need to.
Oh, someone's not on mute. Okay. So Sven and Anna can just share their screen again and show that. That would be fantastic because that will allow everyone to take down some details.
I'm trying to find the place to share my screen at the moment. I think I need to be given permission maybe to share again. No, I got it. Can I? No.
Technology, it's wonderful. Sometimes it's challenging, let's say, but we're there.
I'm pressing on the share and it's not letting me. Perhaps, do I need permission again?
Julia's going to have a little look into that for you quickly. In the meantime, I'd like to just let everyone know that looks like Anna's sharing. There we go. That's fantastic. So if you want to get in contact with Anna or Sven, this is how you do it. When we send out the recording, we'll also have this information on the email that gives you access to the recording as well. So you don't need to hurry and write that all down now. It will be available when the email is sent to you with the recording. But look, I'm just very grateful for Anna and Sven for sharing their time today and for everyone attending so that we could learn more about...
5 more minutes, okay? 5 more minutes. I think it's...
If you also want to join the Varroa Controller newsletter, you can do that through Anna and Sven's website, and you might like to do that. As I said to you earlier, you should receive the recording over the next couple of days. And we certainly look forward to meeting up with all of you again at one of our webinars. If you haven't already joined Be Natural Beekeepers Varroa Warriors, you might like to consider doing that. This is our first webinar for this year, and we will be having many more webinars on natural ways of managing Varroa. We will be exploring lots of different things in the Facebook group. We're working on citizen scientist projects already so that we can help scientists come up with better ways of managing Varroa. So if you haven't become a member, I would encourage you to do that if you're comfortable being on Facebook, because we have very lively discussions sometimes, and we have all different types of beekeepers who are members of that group, from scientists and academics through to bee breeders, commercial beekeepers, as well as recreational and backyard beekeepers. And everyone is welcome in that group to learn and to also share their experiences. So I'd just like to thank everybody again. And Julia's just put the Varroa Warriors link into the chat. Thank you. And we're getting lots of thanks for your presentation today. So
Thank you for having us and for giving us the opportunity to talk about this.
well, it's our pleasure. And it looks like there's going to be some people who are going to explore purchasing one or using one at a club. So that's really fantastic. And what I'd just like to say now is that we'll probably look at closing off this webinar very, very shortly. But thank you for participating, and we hope that everyone has a good experience moving forward with their bees. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We will now close this webinar.